Hello and welcome to Sunset Television. You're watching Big Picture with me, Vishal Dahiya, and today we're going to talk about the priorities and challenges for the first virtual Quad Summit, the Leaders Summit there. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be participating along with his Australian and Japanese counterpart, along with the President of the United States as well, in the first Leaders Summit in the Quadrilateral Framework being held virtually on 12th of March. Now, the leaders will discuss regional and global issues of shared interest and will also exchange views on practical areas of cooperation towards maintaining a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. The summit will provide an opportunity for the leaders to exchange views on contemporary challenges such as resilient supply chains, emerging and critical technologies, maritime security, and climate change as well. So today we're going to talk about all these aspects in terms of what exactly will be the priority agenda for the leaders during this particular summit and what are the challenges these four nations and specifically the Quad framework will be facing from here onwards. And for more on this, we're joined by two distinguished panelists. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with we have Professor Pant, who is joining us. He is the head of the Strategic Studies Program in ORF, and we're also joined by former Ambassador Prabhu, who has served in some of these nations out there. Welcome both of you gentlemen to Sunset Television. Let me begin with you, Professor Pant, and let's start by contextualizing the entire issue at hand here. Let's first understand the significance and the relevance of the Quad framework.
Thanks, Vishal. At a time when the center of gravity of global politics, global economics is shifting to the Indo-Pacific, where Indo-Pacific as a construct is being accepted from Europe to Oceania, I think we are looking at a dramatic recalibration of geopolitical realities in front of us. And Quad platform, which at one point or just a few months back we would be saying, look, Quad is nothing but an amorphous grouping. Quad is not doing very much. It is it is unable to tackle long-term challenges, or it is taking a lot of time to evolve. We are now looking at the first Leaders Summit. It is a quite dramatic development in many respects. If you recall, the whole idea of Quad germinated as far back as 2007 in the first iteration. And then, it sort of lost momentum very early on because the idea was that let's not gang up together and annoy the Chinese. Now, in 2017, it got resurrected. But since then, we had seen gradual move towards issues on infrastructure development, on infrastructure financing, on how the four nations can work together. But it was happening at a lower level. I think now what we are witnessing in the last year or so is the changes that have been wrought in by COVID-19, by the rise of China, by the changing geoeconomic realities in the region, and by an administration in Washington now, which also takes its cue from its predecessor and is refashioning the Indo-Pacific strategy. We are now at a stage where in the first 2 months in office, in fact, less than 2 months in office, it is supporting the initiative of the Leaders Summit. So what we are looking at today from a perspective of the region is a platform of a quadrilateral security dialogue between four major powers in the Indo-Pacific, evolving perhaps into something more substantive than we would have envisioned, say, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 months back. I think that's the real story here in terms of the long-term trajectory of this platform. We have seen a lot of developments over the last few years, but this is one development perhaps which marks a turning point in the evolution of the idea of Quad, in the idea of the Indo-Pacific, as well as the larger balance of power in the region.
Okay. Let me also bring in Mr. Prabhu here. Mr. Dayal, the idea of Quad, if we were talking about that, in the earlier stages, it was all about dialogue and discussion on security-related issues. But now it's a larger, broader framework, as Professor Pant also pointed out, talking about all kind of issues. All challenges, and basically focusing on tangible results as well in these aspects. So how do you view the present status of the quadrilateral framework?
Well, in my view, what Professor Pant said is absolutely correct, that Quad is evolving into something really substantive. I'd like to make a few quick points. First, the Quad used to be known as the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, but is now being known as the Quadrilateral Framework. This indicates that it has gone beyond being just a security dialogue into becoming a framework for action. Now, the central theme of the Quad is countering the aggressiveness and the expansionism of China in the Indo-Pacific region. Second, I'd like to state that the centrality of India in the Quad framework can hardly be overstated. The name Indo-Pacific itself is a testimony of this. Now, India has faced Chinese territorial expansionism right since the War of 1962 and also has the most serious ongoing standoff with China. So, India's centrality in Quad is very much a fact. Third, let me mention that, as Professor Pant said, and as you mentioned in your introductory remarks, the meeting on March 12 will be the first ever summit of the Quad. It has met till now only at either the working level or since September 2019 at the level of the foreign ministers. Now, there have been 3 foreign ministers level meetings, but this will be the first summit. This will be only a virtual summit, but it is likely that the Quad leaders will have an in-person summit after 3 months in London on the sidelines of the G7 summit in June 2021, to which India has also been invited. And now let me make a couple of additional points. The first additional point is that there were speculations in some quarters that Joe Biden will reduce the importance of the Quad and US policy formulation. The Chinese were very keen to see this happen. Now, these speculations have turned out to be incorrect. Recently, the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said that Biden has made the summit one of his earliest multilateral engagements, and it shows the importance it is giving to close cooperation with its allies in the Indo-Pacific region. The second additional point that I would like to make is that the leaders will talk about regional and global matters of shared interest, but specifically about the threat from China. They will talk about efforts to fight the coronavirus pandemic and discuss opportunities for collaboration in ensuring that the Indo-Pacific region gets equitable access to safe and affordable vaccines. They will exchange views on contemporary challenges such as resilient supply chains, emerging and critical technologies, maritime security, and climate change. But most importantly, they will discuss practical areas of cooperation towards maintaining a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. Thus, the core discussion will be about countering the aggressive policies of China in the Indo-Pacific region.
Okay. Professor Pant, your views there on these two aspects, and let's take it one by one. First is obviously the core discussion, and it is, as Ambassador Dayal is pointing out, will be focused on the Indo-Pacific region and countering, China's advances out there in various aspects, but also the fact that United States has said that, the early Quad summit reflects the Biden administration's priorities as well. So how should that also be interpreted?
I think Biden administration is signaling that, contrary to what many had speculated, that perhaps, or contrary to what many in China were speculating, that perhaps there will be a recalibration in Washington's China policy post-Trump. Biden administration wants to continue with its focus squarely on the Indo-Pacific. And I think, frankly, for any major power of the size of America, you really cannot ignore what is happening in the Indo-Pacific anymore. And you cannot really disentangle yourself from the going-ons in the realm of geoeconomics and geopolitics in the region. So what Biden administration is doing is, I think, trying to be slightly more clever in its approach by saying that, look, we want to tackle China, but we also want to involve some of the regional stakeholders. And in this particular case, a platform which was evolving a bit, with some reticence in the past, they have given it their stamp of approval. They are now moving forward with that particular platform. And I think that gives really heft to Quad, because Quad has the potential then to emerge as the nucleus of something much bigger in the region. This is a region, this is the larger maritime space which at the moment lacks institutional architecture. It lacks a security architecture. And I think that is the reason why we see China, a country like China, dominating the discourse and also bullying countries across the spectrum, be it Australia, ASEAN countries, India, Japan, etc. And I think with America deciding that it wants to build bridges with its traditional partners and involve new partners like India into this enterprise, suddenly now Quad looks more operational, more realistic in its approach, and also more substantive in its outreach. So I think that is one aspect of what perhaps Biden administration is trying to do, and make a case to its allies and its friends like India that Washington will be there, contrary to some speculation that perhaps Washington might be withdrawing from the Indo-Pacific. They are signaling that they will be very much there in the play, and they would step up their engagement with like-minded countries. And that is, I think, in sync with what other countries in the region, including India, think that India also is talking about cooperation with like-minded countries. Japan, Australia, ASEAN member states are talking of cooperation with like-minded countries. And therefore, this concert of countries, perhaps, it becomes the only possible bulwark against Chinese aggression. So while there will be a lot of talk in normative sense about freedom of operation, freedom of navigation, free and open Indo-Pacific, I think the target would be very clear as to where it is being targeted.
Okay. So that's about the United States of America, and to understanding why the Biden administration seemingly has made this, that is the Quad framework, a priority in terms of the summit meeting there. Let's also understand the Australia and Japanese point of view. And Ambassador Dayal, not long ago, the Australia was not very keen, as a partner country in Quad on continuing, and we saw that that back and forth being done by the Australian government. But now, if we are looking at the way both Australia and Japan have to position or reposition themselves, what is in it for them? One, and how can we expect them to go ahead and recalibrate or remodel their approach?
Well, all the 4 Quad members are having serious problems with China. Of course, as I said earlier, India has been facing the most serious problems. The Chinese have been having a standoff with us for several months, and we have an ongoing dispute over the border, which is at best called the line of actual control. But the other countries in the Quad also have serious problems. Japan, for instance, is very concerned about China's expansionism in the South China Sea and its claims to the Shinkaku Islands. Australia has been slapped with sanctions by China and is having a multiplicity of problems with that country. The United States is concerned about a whole host of issues, such as China's human rights violations in the in the western part of that country, about Hong Kong, about Taiwan, and about the manner in which the Chinese are threatening U.S. strategic interests in the entire Indo-Pacific region. So all the 4 Quad members have their concerns about China, and these concerns are growing more and more serious. Now, as you said yourself, the Chinese were very hopeful that the Biden administration would soft pedal on Quad and that this organization would dwindle away. But the fact is that within a month of the inauguration of Joe Biden as president, the 3rd Quad foreign ministers meeting had been held virtually on 18 February this year. And during this meeting, the 4 member countries agreed to oppose strongly any attempts by China to alter the status quo in the Indo-Pacific region by force. And they vowed to work with ASEAN and Europe. So far from Quad dwindling away as the Chinese were hoping, it has in fact been strengthening and been gaining momentum.
Okay. And what has changed for Australia there, Mr. Dayal?
Well, the overall Chinese policy towards Australia has been marked by the tendency of bullying. China is a bully. Now, Australia had been earlier bullied by China into taking a very, very negative approach towards Quad. And in fact, if the Quad had been lying in limbo till 2017, it was because of the fact that the Australians were not keen that this organization should have any momentum. But the Chinese have been bullying the Australians, particularly on trade issues, and threatening them with all kinds of very, very retaliatory action. The Australians have been very worried also about China's policy in the technological sphere.
Okay.
Because cyber warfare is something that the Chinese have perfected and they have unleashed it on the Australians. So now, far from being rather distant and detached towards Quad, the Australians took part in the military exercises which were held in November last year and which involved all the four Quad members. So things have changed as far as Australia's approach towards China is concerned.
Okay, let me bring Professor Pant back here. And Professor Pant, let's now look at the Indian perspective here, as far as the Quad framework is concerned. So from your point of view, what exactly should be the high on the priority of India here, and the agenda when we are talking about not only the discussion but the tangible outcomes also, and what might be the challenges with India?
Vishal, one of the things that perhaps a platform like this allows countries to do is to give them some space to leverage each other's strengths. And I think one of the things that we are hearing in the media, for example, is that some agreements to finance India's vaccination efforts are on the cards. And I think that would be a very significant move, because India's role in the global health crisis and in the global supply chain when it comes to pharmaceuticals has been widely appreciated, and that is something where it now, if finances can come from other countries, from supporting countries, from like-minded countries, I think that would not only be good for Indian pharmaceutical industry, but also for the larger global good, if you will. So I think in that sense, that perhaps is going to be one of the tangible outcomes as far as I can see at the moment. But beyond that, what I think this platform like this does is again, India can leverage the strengths that other parties bring to the table. Now, I think, as Ambassador was pointing out earlier, India has been facing this challenge from China's rise for a very long time. We just had a real crisis on our borders, which we are trying to figure out what to do about it. And we have partly disengagement process has started, but clearly India's point of view is that the larger framework of Sino-Indian relations cannot move forward without the border crisis, without the border issue being resolved. Now, herein the challenge for India, for a country like India, is how can it develop its own internal muscle power as well as leverage partnerships with other countries. And in this particular case, a platform like Quad allows India that leverage, which perhaps India needs and a country like India desires when it is looking at the larger geopolitical realities evolving around it. So I think for India, this is a moment where India becomes part and parcel of a larger shift that is happening in the Indo-Pacific. India becomes part of a larger institutional architecture that perhaps is in the offing. And India is also signaling to the region and to its key partners that it is willing to take leadership on key issues, sitting at the high table with countries, with major powers in the region, deciding the future course of action, not only for its own interests, but also, I think, as we were discussing, for free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific.
Okay. And Mr. Dayal, from your point of view, sir, out there, the issues which might be of really, importance or significant from India's perspective when we're talking about this particular Quad summit, and then also, a future perspective on the issues which might carry further in the months and years to come with all these four nations working together.
Well, India has to guard its national interests. And India's national interests are being severely threatened by Chinese economic and territorial expansionism. So India has to take care of whatever possible action needs to be taken, either directly or in concert with other like-minded countries. And in that context, Quad will continue to assume greater and greater significance, at least in the foreseeable future. Will the Chinese bend their ways? It doesn't seem like it, because the Chinese are prepared to go the whole hog when it comes to taking on anybody. So the Chinese will really have to alter their course if Quad in turn has to tone down its own level of action. But as I see it, Quad will continue to strengthen because the threat from China is not going anywhere.
Okay, and in terms of tangible results on specific issues there, Ambassador Dayal, the aspect of critical technologies, because countries like United States of America out there, when we're talking about obviously security issues, more enhanced defense cooperation there as well, and the issues like climate change there as well, when you have both Australia and Japan as well.
Well, certainly all these issues are extremely important, and the press statements from all the Quad countries have summarized the numerous issues which will be figuring in the discussions. But most of these issues, in one way or another, connect to China. For instance, if we talk about better connectivity, then who is coming in the way of that? It is China. If we talk about climate change, then China is seen as an impediment in one sense or another. So I think that the role of China will continue to be critically examined. And I think that is going to be the basic nature of the discussions. Where these discussions go, I think they will only go in a positive direction because all the four countries realize that there is no other alternative to working closely together.
Okay. One last question there, Professor Pant, as Ambassador Dayal is pointing out that, effectively the role of China will be under scrutiny, the way, that nation can be tackled at various levels. Although the discussion and the issues on the table will be very, far-ranging, starting from climate change to Indo-Pacific to critical technologies to, effective COVID vaccination as well. Professor Pant, you will have to unmute yourself, sir.
I think the framing, Vishal, will certainly be in a manner where, while China would be the elephant in the room, the proverbial one at that, I think the framing of the issues will be such where the four nations will try to talk of global and regional governance architecture and what these countries can do. So whether you're looking at critical technologies, whether you're looking at climate change, whether you're looking at security architecture, freedom of navigation, or other aspects of maritime security. I think what the four nations will try to do, or have been trying to do for some time now, is to provide a roadmap to the region for regional governance. And I think that's what perhaps the discussion will, the direction of the discussion would be, because China, of course, will be present everywhere in all of these discussions. The shadow will be hanging, over all of these points. But I think that the way perhaps the four nations would approach this would be to make a case to the region, to the regional states, to other regional power centers that, look, there are alternatives to being bullied by a country like China. So if we can provide alternatives, if major powers in the region can pool their resources, whether it is on a vaccination front, whether it is on critical technologies front, whether coming together on climate technology and climate change is concerned, whether it is about maritime security, if they can pool their resources, they can perhaps provide a roadmap for regional governance, which is at the moment absent, and in the absence of which China has been trying to create such a big havoc in the region. And I think that is perhaps going to be the long-term trajectory of this platform, as well as the immediate concerns of this summit.
Okay. So there it is, the immediate concerns as well as long-term trajectory, as our panelists were pointing out. Thank you so much, Professor Pant, as well as Mr. Prabhu Dayal, for sharing those insights with us. And it looks like the underlying theme will be the rule-based international order, which these four countries are, trying to go ahead and look for in all aspects. There will be issues discussed, tackled as well. Ways will be found, solutions will be worked upon by pooling the resources as well as the prowess of all these nations. Let's wait and watch as to what exactly the leaders have to discuss and say during this particular virtual summit on 12th of March. We'll bring you more details as well, and we'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.